And here we are.
What a pleasure.
Once again.
An absolute pleasure to see the two of you.
I want to tell you both, you've been like brothers to me.
You want to tell us, but you're not going to. This is always a blast. It's always a great thing. Every week.
We haven't been doing it that long, so
there's time for it not to be so fun.
There's time for it to wear. There's plenty of time for it to wear thin.
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but it's nowhere close to wearing thin for me.
My ride is here. I've got to go.
Thanks for coming.
So for those of you joining us for the first or last time, this is the Arkin Brothers talking about movies. And sorry, that's
Brooklyn. That's Brooklyn for you. Sorry. That's going to go on.
Nice.
And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon when you do so that you get updates of all of our upcoming events. We're probably going to be doing this every day.
At least until there's a vaccine.
Yeah. We just sit around and talk about movies. For those of you who don't know, the genesis of this show is this is pretty much what we were doing privately. And we decided, why not share it with the world?
We figured, hey, since we're doing this anyway for no money, why don't we do it on camera for no money?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And open ourselves up to ridicule and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And
why not?
And the inevitable question, who the hell do you think you are?
Exactly. Well, we have an hour and a half probably to tell you who we think we are.
Yeah.
So buckle in.
It's gonna be a rough ride. So tonight, we're gonna be talking about 1984's Little Drummer Girl. We might talk a little bit about the more recent Drummer Girl on Little Drummer Girl.
I'm not going to talk about that.
I'm not talking about it because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't either. I don't want to say anything about it one way or another.
I checked in on it last night. I watched the first episode last night to put some things in perspective for myself.
To contextualize.
Yeah.
Where do you see this new Little Drummer Girl?
You can get it with a free subscription to some.
It's already too complicated.
Yeah. Amazon Prime. I watched it.
Okay.
Amazon Prime for $1.99 an episode.
Is it an Amazon show or
no? It was BBC One.
Okay.
And there's some premium subscription service that you can get it on, or you can buy it by the episode on Amazon Prime. And instead of Klaus Kinski, you get Michael Shannon. And instead of whoever the actor was, I'm forgetting his name, who played Joseph in the 1984 version, you get Alexander Skarsgård. And instead of Diane Keaton, you get Florence Pugh.
Oh, who's actually becoming quite a big deal right now.
Yeah.
Florence Pugh was in Midsommar, I think, that film. And she was great in that. And glad to see she's doing work. That's great. It's hard to work. So I'm glad she's working.
Yeah. So what do we think of this movie?
Well, hold on. We haven't given a that's not a preamble. That's not anywhere close to the kind of preamble that this film or any other film deserves.
Okay. All right.
You don't introduce the film by talking about the mini series they did around them.
I think it's all inappropriate. Yeah. So, as we usually do, let's just run down the stats and the basics. We've got Little Drummer Girl. 1984 was the release date on this movie, directed by George Roy Hill of the Sting fame, very famous director who is a little bit under discussed. Made a lot of great movies. Slapshot.
Great Waldo Pepper.
Butch Cassidy.
And Butch Cassidy, yeah. How could I forget that one? So he's a great director. This is his second to last film that he ever made, and this is a espionage thriller based on a very famous John le Carre novel. From what I've read, I've not read any John le Carre, but I'm told it's his best book, or considered his best book by people online that wrote things that I don't know whether to believe or not. And it follows
is going somewhere, because a lot of his stuff was truly great. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is a definitive work in the genre.
So I'm told. Not read a lick of Jean le Carre. And so this, I think, was the first adaptation of a le Carre thing. I might be wrong about that, but
no, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, I think, was well before this.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Written by Loring Mandel. The screenplay was by Loring Mandel, who's mostly a TV writer, with a great production group of people in production that I'll get into later. A
German DP by the name of
Wolfgang Trau, or True. His big claim to fame here would have been working on the electrical department of Das Boot, but he was the cinematographer on a lot of German films that I haven't seen. And the cast is extensive, and it's really a vehicle for Diane Keaton, who plays an actress who gets embroiled in an espionage plot. That's all I can say about it right now, because it's very twisty and turny, and Matthew is going to have to take lead on any kind of descriptions, because I was a bit confused. I will completely admit to being rather confused for many of the times of the movie.
Really? I'm surprised to hear that.
Well, I don't really follow twisty narratives very well, to be honest. I'll be totally honest. Like, I really don't. It takes me a few viewings to get something like that remotely clear for me. And I enjoy those movies a lot, but I end up having to rely on other things to get through the experience, like atmosphere, characters, situational things in the movie. But the machinations of this plot were a little confusing for me.
Well, there are definitely a lot of things in the plot of this movie that rely on you to know certain methods that are real in the espionage world. Just for example, there's one line in the movie where Klaus Kinski comes into where they're holding the fellow prisoner, and one of the people who's been questioning him says he's had seven days and nights in the past 3 days. And if you don't know what that means or what those interrogation methods are, that's gonna lose you completely. Oh, we lost your sound, Anthony.
That's not actually, a complaint of movies. It's actually a complaint of myself. But
it's not a complaint about you. It's that this is a genre that if you're not really versed in it, if it's not something you read and watch, no matter how well unless they spell it out for you in a way that would be bad movie making, I think you're not going to get it.
Okay.
It would be like going to see a Chinese movie and having them stop every once in a while and saying, "Let us explain this for you Americans out there." You don't want them doing that. That would be bad movie making.
I think the movie. I mean, my instinct is I'm not a scholar on spycraft or all things espionage, but I feel like this movie really works incredibly well on just an emotional level, even if there are intricacies of the plot that are a little confusing. And I will say this: that there are plenty of plots that I have seen in initial viewings of things that remain confusing no matter how many times I see the film. But this is a movie that I've watched probably now about 7 or 8 times.
Oh wow!
And the intricacies of the plot are, I think, quite brilliant, and they're also emblematic, I feel, of John le Carre's actual experience in the world of espionage, and it really holds up on multiple viewings, this movie, because it is dense, but it tracks like crazy if you watch it more than once.
You've watched it that many times this week just preparing for the show? I'm so impressed.
I watched it that many times today. I'm exhausted. I'm like,
wow. You've put me to shame. I've seen it exactly 1.5 times.
I just pounded Adderall and ran it on a loop.
Wow, that's intense. It's such a trippy movie too, so I can imagine that experience would be completely hallucinogenic.
Yeah, no wonder you liked it.
In the other room, I had El Topo play.
Yeah, it's stereophonically. That's great.
Well, in spite of the fact that you don't feel you're like an aficionado of spycraft movies, what did you think of it, Tony?
I will admit to having some mixed feelings about the movie. But honestly, there's 2 things that are making me want to go back to see it now. And the first is you've gone to bat for this movie very heavily, like 8 times, and that's like, you clearly like this movie and see something in it that I didn't catch this first viewing. I had my sleeves rolled up. I completely love George Roy Hill. He actually, Slapshot is as wrong a movie as could be for today, but it is one of the funniest movies for me ever made.
I love that movie.
Little Romance is a great movie. The Sting is a great movie. Butch Cassidy, I mean, he's a great talent. I love his stuff. I had a little trouble figuring out why they tapped him for this movie. I was a little bit like, this is so not like a George Roy Hill movie in every way. It's nothing shaggy or funny about it. There's nothing, there's nothing kind of like,
well, I don't know, backing up the car and crashing it and then not being able to park and singing Downtown. That stuff had me cracking up. That's
different kind of humor that I'm talking about.
But
I mean, like,
I'm being a little facetious.
And I was left feeling like I didn't totally understand what I was supposed to feel for these people, other than really sad for their experiences and what they went through. And maybe that's all that was being asked of me. But I didn't know if that ending, for instance, was supposed to be ironic, or I didn't quite know how to feel about it or her. And now it occurs to me, maybe that's part of the puzzle or part of the thing. I don't know. And I think that I've also been thinking about it all day today, because we saw it yesterday, and I really can't stop thinking about the movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, there's things about it. It started me going, well, would I have responded more if it had been cast differently, or if another director had done it, or what was the thing that I couldn't hook into? And then it generated into me just genuinely thinking about the situation she was in and the things that I really did love and couldn't stop thinking about. So it's that kind of weird experience where I'm like, I think I missed something and I want to go back.
I hope you do, because it having watched it multiple times and then watching it again in preparation for tonight, I always end up getting very emotional in that movie. The moment when Khalil the terrorist that the terrorist that the Mossad is trying to, the big fish that they're trying to get, and they use
Okay,
Diane
the
Keaton,
brother of the one that they've been torturing in that room.
and then they
Okay.
use Diane Keaton to kind of flush him out.
Mm-hmm.
The moment at the end of the film, when he realizes that she has set him up, and she says to him, like, "Who are you? Who are you working for? Who are you?" And she's terrified, and she goes like, I'm nobody. I'm nothing. It ends up always breaking my heart.
Mm.
And I guess also the overlap of show business and activism,
Mm-hmm.
and the potential for that to become a really ripe field of or potential for dilettantism,
Mm-hmm.
Passionate feeling about the downtrodden or a political cause, but that is superficial because it's giving someone a sense of purpose,
Yeah.
and making them feel plugged into subjects with gravity, but it can be compensating for the fact that someone doesn't really know who they are or what their purpose in life is.
That's really interesting. Wow.
And I feel like the film is really consciously, and I would imagine the book is really consciously about that, and how these guys that are serious players in the game are looking for ways to exploit people who have a kind of superficial need to feel plugged into a global subject. I don't know. It really speaks.
Look, that's really interesting, and that's a deep take on it. That now that I can now it clicks into place in a certain way. Now it's definitely something I want to review, because I knew it was working on some level, because George R. Hill to me is too smart a director, right? I mean, I didn't feel like he just did this as a money thing. I mean, it seemed like an interesting enough project for him to be really excited about doing, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't show up for just any old movie, Diane Keaton, back particularly then. Like, it was like, I remember, I don't think she'd worked for a while when this came out or something, or she was trying to I just remember this movie being a really big thing for her at the time. It was
her carrying a film, for one thing.
Had she not really done that before? I can't remember.
I don't think so. I mean, even Annie Hall, she was the title character, and was this before Annie Hall? I don't remember.
No, this was way after. This was 10 years after Annie Hall.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Annie Hall, in some ways, Woody Allen carried that. This is her.
Sure, but in every way, Annie Hall is nothing without her presence. Like, it's nothing. So it's interesting. You worked with Diane Keaton, didn't you?
I did. I did Hanging Up with her, that she starred in and directed.
Okay.
And I'm haunted by something that I'm afraid went awry with her, but I'll probably never know if it did or not. But I was playing Meg Ryan's husband in that, and she was directing, and it was a lovely experience. Nora Ephron's script, and at one point in a break, Diane Keaton said they were lighting or something, and she looked over at me and she said, "I wish we were acting in a scene together in this movie because I would just wipe the floor with you." And she was, and she had been very supportive and great as a director. So I felt like, okay, she's joking and she's screwing around with me. And when my part was done on the film, I wrote her a note. And I said, thank you for a wonderful experience. And, I too am sorry that we didn't get to actually act together, because at this point I'm pretty sure that you would realize that I would have wiped the floor with you. And
oh dear, didn't go.
yeah, and after a couple of weeks, a big box arrives at the house, and there's a note in it, and she goes, and in the note, it was from Diane Keaton. She goes, "Oh yeah, sucker fuck, here's just a small sampling of my work." And in the box were like DVDs, or not even DVDs. I think they were at that point like VHS tapes of all of her great films, like Annie Hall, Little Drummer Girl, a million other things. And it was, and I couldn't tell if it was like, her way of like continuing the joke and sending me a bunch of things that have in the library, or if it was really her thinking that I had been intentionally saying like, I could wipe the floor with it.
I have to think that she was in on the joke and felt
I
that.
Hope she did. I hope
yeah.
she did.
I hope she was in on the joke, because I mean, I think that. All right, I'm just going to open it up here. I think that your work in Full Moon High would wipe the floor with her work in The Little Drummer Girl.
Thanks, Matthew. I think I know where you're coming from.
No, I mean, I did not buy this movie. I love this book, and I love the story, and I see and agree with everything you're saying that you're pulling out about the depth of the story. And I didn't see any of it in the performances and the movie.
Really?
Yeah, the movie, the tone of it, she struck. I felt that they portrayed her not so much as a dilettante as an idiot, and just not very bright, and not very talented in
I think that was on purpose. I mean, that's one of the things I love about the movie, is that she, in the scenes that you see her working with her theater company, it feels like a conscious choice to me that they are kind of a second string, group of people trying to carve a life for themselves. Enough so that the idea of getting a commercial for a wine that shoots on location is the big event of their careers.
Yeah, but my question is that if you're that bad an actor, how good are you going to be at espionage?
You don't have to be good at espionage.
Well,
you just have to effectively fall in love and be malleable.
Yeah,
screw both of you guys.
No, I thought Bill Nighy gave the best performance in the movie, and Klaus Kinski was a close second.
Well,
yeah,
Klaus Kinski, I mean, I could go on about him forever.
I thought he was spectacular.
He's incredible.
He lit up the screen for me.
Yeah,
and I bought him in that position.
That really came alive for me during that interrogation sequence. That part of the movie, that long sequence where she's there I guess overnight, but it feels like it goes on for a couple of days or something. It's kind of disjointed in how it's edited, brilliantly edited. Brilliantly edited by, do we know who the editor was? Do you guys know?
We can
No.
find out.
Oh, I know, only the guy that cut The Godfather
Oh, really?
and, and The Sting and Sound of Music and a lot of other amazing films. But that's some great work from him in the movie. And I thought those scenes were really, really fascinating. And I felt like in those scenes, I was in it and learning stuff about that world and how it worked in a kind of legit way. And I guess at the time, because now I really am curious to see it a little bit more deeply. But when I saw my first reaction to it was that I was expecting a more atmospheric, lush experience out of it, and it's a very dry movie. It's extremely dry in the way it's shot. It's not. There's nothing gilded about it at all. You know, it's very German in the way it's shot. It's very, very clinical, which I like and admire a lot. I was expecting to be in the world of the romance that she thought she was in.
Right.
And so I was kind of expecting, and admittedly, a movie like like the Peter Weir film with Sigourney Weaver, Year of Living Dangerously, which is a movie I love a lot. I kind of was expecting that kind of entrancement with the locations and the atmospheres and the romance of it, and I was really surprised at how kind of cold and clinical this view of her and this world was. So what felt maybe a little cognitive dissonance for me at the time, actually now, it's a case for it actually being kind of meta, like
that's actually part of what I love about the movie, is that it's a movie about war to me. And the two factions that have stakes in it are willing to do anything and use anybody in order to accomplish what they need to accomplish. And to me, part of what the movie is about is that if you enter that world and you don't have a horse in that race, you're doomed. You know, that if you set foot in the world of that kind of war and you don't have a passionate agenda, you're going to be burned up and used like a piece of trash,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately that's what I feel like happens to her over the course of the film, and she's left with absolutely, she's just hollowed out by the time the film is over, because she didn't really have she had no business being in the midst of that. And
yeah I have a question that I guess would be for both of you, because this also would pertain to the book too. I was admittedly a little confused as to her continued motivation to be there. And I could see it a bunch of different ways. I mean, my kind of take on it for a bit was like, is she like an espionage junkie? Is she just kind of turned on by, because she does, it's like this love affair kind of, but she's in love, she kind of is in love with maybe a bunch of different people, or is like the moment where she's in bed with the guy we think she's in love with throughout most of this movie, this guy who kind of like in the movie Notorious is guiding her through this dangerous world, and her lover, stand-in lover at first, and then actually a lover.
Joseph.
Yes, Joseph. And who's played by, I've got it up here, Yorgo Voyagis.
Yeah, a Greek actor.
Yes. And she says she starts like looking at his body and asking where he got the scars, and he's explaining like this is a stab wound from this thing, and I was tortured here, and and it's a really lovely moment between them. And then the same moment happens again with the villainous guy at the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
This gives everything away, but
And how villainous is he?
Well, I mean, villainous in the sense that he's set up to be the villain, and I'm perfectly happy to say that this is really a gallery of rogues. I mean, like there isn't really a lot of. There's no one at the end of this movie that I feel good about. Like I don't think feels like everybody's pretty compromised as a human being by this lifestyle, But what's the takeaway? What is it in the book, Matthew? What is drives her?
I read the book so long ago that I don't really remember the moral side of it in the book, the moral point of view of the book.
I know she starts out with kind of a basic interest in the Middle East crisis and sympathy for Palestine. But as it went, I just didn't quite know what I was as an audience supposed to be feeling about where she was. Was she in love with? Did she love the excitement? Did she fall in love with literally a couple of three of these guys? Because she kind of falls in love with the first guy with the mask on that she meets at that lecture.
Well,
I got
definitely romantically attracted to him.
Like idealizes this mysterious guy who's at this lecture, and
but that's what pegs her as a candidate.
Oh yeah, that I buy, and all I'm saying is that I couldn't quite figure out what her thing was by the end of it. Was she? I don't know. Was she?
I'm sorry to jump in, and I know you're asking Matthew this question.
It was for both of you.
But I think I really feel like that is what the movie is about. When the guy when Khalil, the guy that she's in bed with at the end, realizes that the radio is a homing device and that he's been set up, he says to her, he literally says to her, like, who are you? Who are you working for? Who are you? And she goes, I'm nobody. I'm nothing. And I feel like the film is, if you take away all the espionage and all the other stuff about the plot, that the film ends up being about the danger of not knowing who you are, of not having a center. And I feel like her character is, she's an actress and she has aspirations and she has a desire to be effective and meaningful, but there's something empty about her, and in that emptiness, the powers that be recognize an opportunity to exploit something, and that's part of what I think the film is very consciously about.
That's really interesting, man.
Yeah,
I'll buy a lot of that.
Yeah. There's also a piece of real estate I'd like to sell the two of you.
Well, I think there's an interesting piece of this, though, because I started becoming aware of Diane Keaton, a little like around this time, 84. I wasn't like watching Annie Hall as a kid. I was I was watching other kinds of movies and stuff. And then so I, in a way, her persona at the time was then perfectly tuned to what you're talking about. But she's since kind of gone on to represent a much more iconic, maybe feminist persona or person with a lot of depth and gravitas. But I guess earlier on she was kind of not known for playing. She was kind of known for playing characters who were a bit lost, right, and a bit flighty, and not necessarily that like professional, career grounded people. Is that true, or is that not true?
I can't make a general statement about it, but she certainly, she certainly sort of, I don't know. I mean, The Godfather, she was playing someone who was, she was certainly kind of being duped about some aspects of the life she was entering in that film. And Annie Hall, she played a kind of flighty, God.
I mean, I don't want to. I have IMDb right here.
I'm looking for Mr. Goodbar. She was playing somebody who's pretty lost.
Yeah.
Very lost and very, I mean, she'd already done Reds.
She had done Reds by the time she did Little Drummer Girl?
Yeah, 2 movies before. She did Reds and Shoot the Moon before Little Drummer Girl.
Really? Wow. Okay.
So my assessment's wrong. Reds, she played a very strong character with a lot of, so that's not true. I was trying to think of one, of because I was reading up at this, and I know that when I saw the movie, I was like, I wonder who, like, I sometimes recast stuff in my head, like what would it be like if someone else played it or whatever. And I thought something about this, I bet, was originally British. Like, it's Le Carre, it's an actress doing Shakespeare. So I'm wondering, like,
well,
I read that Vanessa Redgrave was the person he wrote it for, and was widely considered to be that was her for many years. People just assumed that this character was Vanessa Redgrave, partly because she is so political and
she was very aligned with the Palestinian cause. John le Carre had a half sister who was a kind of politically radical, and apparently this character, she was the inspiration for aspects of this character,
right?
And obviously his sister, his half sister, was English,
right? Well, I want to find that gut punch in the movie that you find in it, because I wasn't gut punched, but I hear you, man. I feel like I got punched by a similar movie. I feel like Falcon and the Snowman has certain parallels to this film.
Yeah.
And that movie guts me when I see it. But
something interesting about how the world of espionage and spycraft will devour any civilian that decides to kind of enter that realm.
Yeah.
And I think the argument could be made that we have an administration that's reflecting that at the moment.
Yes, you could.
Yeah. Favorite moments in the movie? Things that stood out to you?
Are you asking Adam or me?
Either of you. I know Adam's talked about. I have a favorite moment in the movie.
What is it?
When they're when Klaus Kinski tells them to make the decision and settle their minds about whether or not they're going to kill Michelle, and he says that and then turns around and picks up the phone to call his family.
Yeah.
That's what he's going to check in at home while they're deciding to whether or not to kill the guy.
Yeah.
And that spoke I love that just spoke volumes to me about who this guy is, and that this is my job and it's what I do, and now I have to check in with the wife and kids and see if everybody's got their homework done.
Yeah.
and
that's a great moment.
Yeah. And that I loved. And I also I loved the moment at the end. Oh, you know, I wrote this. Yeah, when she's doing they have a poster for, I think it's at the end. They have a poster for The Winter's Tale. And the quote from The Winter's Tale on the poster is, "Thou metst with things dying, I with things newborn." And I feel like that's talking about the conflict that you're talking about in the movie, that she's naive and in a sense a baby and looking for life and meaning in life.
Yeah.
She gets mixed up with a bunch of people who know death intimately, so intimately that they'll call home and check in with the wife and kids while they're deciding whether to kill somebody. Yeah. So those were two really nice touches for me.
I love Klaus Kinski's entrance into the film when he's posing as the commercial producer.
Yeah.
And I love the actual casting of Klaus Kinski, a German, as the head of this elite Mossad Israeli espionage unit. And I also love the moment when Khalil, when she's in bed with Khalil, and he just suddenly, there's no catalyst for it. He's been sleeping and resting. They've made love earlier in the evening, and suddenly he just wakes up and knows that something is wrong because he's not hearing any cows.
Yeah.
There's no sound. I feel like it's such a great character moment in terms of a guy that's been on the run all his life and knows that he has to be on alert even when things are completely silent and peaceful. There's something wrong. And yeah. I just love that moment where his sixth sense tells him there's something off. I think it's great. And her moment of he says there's no cows, there's no traffic, there's nobody going to work, there's no laborers going to work, there's something off. And she goes, you know, come on, who's going to work at this hour? Who's doing this? And he's in total shadow, but he stops, and you can't even see his face. And in the shadow, he says to her, you know, why are you apologizing for them?
Yeah.
And you know, like the whole thing's turned to shit.
Yeah, not good. Not a good moment.
But you guys didn't like the movie, so to hell with it.
No, I see what you're saying, and it's I'm not suddenly enjoying it more, but I'm seeing the other side of it. I'm either a big enough man to know that I might be wrong, or I have no convictions and I'm willing to blow with the wind. You know, one or the other of those things.
That's why you would be a perfect recruit for
I'd
the
be a
Mossad.
perfect recruit for the Mossad. You know, you love Klaus Kinski, a German, playing the head of this unit. There are German Jews. I love Michael Shannon, an Irishman, playing the head of this unit.
Now you're talking.
There's that. That's it's an interesting choice. What's interesting in this other version of it, this BBC version, she's very, very smart. The actor,
But she still gets manipulated by everybody.
I've only watched the first episode, so the first episode ends with this wonderful moment where the way they get her to Greece is her little company has just closed a production of something, and the conceit is that some rich guy came to see it and loved it and wants to bring the whole company to Greece to perform there.
So it's not a commercial.
It's not a commercial. So she goes to Greece and then sees Alexander Skarsgård there, but she'd seen him in the audience. And they start the affair. And there's different people around. There's this woman, Rose, who befriends her on the beach, and then different people. And then she goes away with Alexander Skarsgård to Athens for that wonderful scene at the Acropolis, which they do very beautifully in this. And then it turns into where she's taking her somewhere, and she starts realizing, wait a minute, I don't know you. And this is starting to feel like a kidnapping, and he won't stop the car. And he finally pulls up to this house. And when she gets out of the car, all of these people who she's been seeing in Greece for the past week are there. And it's like, oh shit.
So he introduces her to his company.
Yeah. And it's so we're just about to step into that scene where they are telling her they have a part for her. But I feel very, I was going to just watch the first episode, and now I want to watch the rest of it because I'm really interested to see, you know, the way they manipulated this person who doesn't have much going on. It's going to be really interesting to see what they have to do to manipulate somebody who's got a real spine. And I'm curious to see what they do with that.
I think we got to get, we can't stop without giving a shout out to, like Henry Bumstead. I mean, come on. I think one of the biggest things about this movie is the design of it. And I think it's one of the more purposefully ugly films, which I actually really admire about it. I think it's actually really handsomely made and unattractive on purpose. And I think that's really smart. And it was a little strange to be going to all these amazing locations, but only kind of seeing the armpit parts of them, which is actually, when you come to think of it, that's what this would be like. You wouldn't be, we go to the Acropolis for a second, but most of this is in like weird back houses in the woods or dirt roads off to the side of places. And it's shot pretty clinically in that kind of austere way. And adding to that, Henry Bumstead, the production designer on this. I mean, you know this guy's pedigree, right? What he's done. So Bumstead, Matthew, did Vertigo, To Kill a Mockingbird.
I know To Kill a Mockingbird a little bit.
So he's one of the great production designers, and the work on costumes and set decor and set and that the design of it to look completely undesigned and Ariel was kind of brilliant. I thought that was really notable.
When we on the Americans, after the pilot had been done, and we had to find a look for the show at the period. Richard Rutkowski, the cinematographer.
Oh, the Americans, right?
And yeah, we screened a number of movies from the period because the first season of The Americans takes place in the early 80s. And one of the things I really wanted to avoid was doing a contemporary take on the 80s and the excesses, the cliches of 80s cinematography, but trying to find a way to make the 80s look like the 80s and incorporating some of the best sort of minimalistic work of the 80s that didn't have a lot of mannerisms to it. And this was one of the movies we screened, Richard and I, just watching it to kind of look at what visual elements were in the movie and trying to incorporate that into the first season of The Americans. And I think the things that were incorporated into the first season, I think informed the rest of the show.
Right.
But I kind of love the sort of non-style.
Yeah, it's got no style. It's got no style. And now that we've been talking about the movie, that that was something that I found off-putting about it at the time. But now that hearing you talk about it, I'm like, wow, well, if this is the universe they're trying to portray, then this is exactly, this is how to depict it. Yeah, that's really fascinating. I loved my favorite moment in the movie, for whatever it's worth, is actually kind of a funny moment, because it really captured to me like a perfect George Roy Hill moment. Like, this was kind of a moment from a George Roy Hill movie to me. Was the first time we meet is it Khalil?
Yeah.
The first time we meet him and he picks her up in the van. And she's just supposed to meet some guy. She's not, we're not really sure who she's going to meet. She doesn't know if she's going to meet a driver or an important person. And this guy picks her up at the airport or something, and he's in a van, and he's like very inauspicious meeting. And he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And they get in the truck together, and he says, it's like an awkward moment. He's like, "So you like music? You like music?" Yeah. And she's like, "Yeah, like sure." And he goes, "Oh, great." And he puts the tape, and it's like this ridiculous kind of like crappy disco music. Yeah, and he's so happy, and it's like this genuinely like awkward moment between them, and I loved that. And then when it turns out that he's kind of the main guy they're looking for, and maybe either the big baddie or the most misunderstood guy in the whole world, it really was a great thing to set him up like that,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love the silliness of it, and I love the device of having like the big fish kind of like they do cinematically, they kind of capture exactly what her experience is, which is she's not really thinking about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Then he ends up being the person that everyone in the film has been looking for.
Yeah. Sammy Frey, man.
Good actor.
I mean, Band of Outsiders. Can we just say the man was in Band of Outsiders?
I don't know that movie.
Me neither.
It's Godard's. It's my favorite Godard movie. Not to get too film school about this, but it's the movie that if you don't like French New Wave and you see this one, you're gonna like French. No matter who you are, you're gonna get it, and it's gonna make you cry and laugh and sing and dance in the streets. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's the movie that Tarantino named his production company after. it's a beloved movie, and it has some devices in it that are completely unique. And anybody in that is just Hall of Fame for all time, as far as I'm concerned. One of those faces.
I love Sammy Frey's choice in the scene where he's talking about how he lost his fingers, you know, and the bomb that was sent to him, and through, as he's telling the whole story, he's just smiling through the whole story.
Yeah, that's right.
He's just laughing at what an idiot he was.
Yeah. Both those characters talk about their injuries in a really interesting, casual way that is very on point.
And the fact that that's somehow, I don't think it's an accident that that's somehow eroticized for her. You know?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that I got pretty fixated on that part of it, and I think that in my twisted head, I was expecting more. I was expecting to go more Cronenberg with that a little bit. Honestly, I thought they were going to make her a little more, not just a cipher or kind of a non-entity person, which is just a great way to look at this movie. I just hadn't, for whatever reason, framed it that way for myself. I was looking for the American movie promise that this woman has something in her that's worth it, and her dream somewhere, it's love or it's a kink. And I thought, well, for sure this has got to be in the book about her being kind of having a thing for danger or tough guys or scars or something about, you know, something that wasn't about these individual guys. And that was just a strange moment that they touch on. And it's kind of great, I guess, that it's not fully developed, that it's just like, maybe that's a thing for her, you know? You're nodding like you've seen it 8 times, so you've covered this, you know, man.
No, I hope you'll watch it again. I think
I will. I absolutely will, because of this conversation, is because I really am dedicated to this director who I feel like just does not get in the conversation enough. Critics didn't really love him very much. He was much more people pleasing director than critic pleasing.
Just said to settle for making $3 billion.
Yeah, I guess he did. Now I'm curious, just to take this outside Matthew, unless you had anything specifically about the movie to talk about, I'm curious of framing it in terms of where you were at when you first saw it. Like, did you see this in the theater, Adam? And did it have the same impact on you then? Did you know you loved it this much right away, or was it going back and looking at it again that?
I actually, well, this may inform why it's so meaningful to me, but I actually saw it when I was a prisoner of war.
Okay, well, it's an interesting viewing choice. I thought they only let you see the Teletubbies in that scenario.
No, I did see it in the theater the first time.
I thought it was just Thomas the Train when you're a prisoner of war. No?
Yeah. No, I did see it in the theater the first time.
And were you blown away by it, or did it?
I dug it. I enjoyed it. I was affected by it.
But it's grown on you then.
I don't know that it's. I mean, I liked it the first time I saw it. It has stayed with me, and in subsequent viewings, I feel like I keep seeing intention.
Mm-hmm. Are you a George Roy Hill fan, Matthew? We've never talked about him.
Yeah, I loved The Sting, and I loved The Great Waldo Pepper.
That I'm guilty. Never seen it. Never saw Great Waldo.
Yeah, I loved that movie.
Big Slapshot fan here, and Little Romance.
Yeah,
you know, Little Romance is.
Yep.
I love Slapshot so much.
Oh my God, it's so wrong and so funny. Written by a woman, interestingly. Yeah. When I learned that, I was a bit surprised. Really? Yeah, it doesn't seem like the kind of movie a woman would want to see, let alone write, but she did a great job.
Michael Ontkean, right?
Michael Ontkean.
Few movies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Paul Newman, Michael Arkin.
Maybe my favorite Paul Newman performance. I love that mode of Paul Newman's, of his the desperation mode that he gets in is the funniest. It's just the funniest.
I love Paul Newman who is just playing like a ne'er-do-well.
Oh, it's the greatest. It's the greatest.
We're gonna have Paul Newman next week.
I read a great anecdote about Paul Newman on Facebook. Somebody talked about being in Connecticut somewhere on a beachside community in Connecticut that Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward had a house at, and this woman went into an ice cream parlor to get some ice cream, and there was only one other customer there, and it was Paul Newman, and she lost her shit completely, but tried to keep it together and ordered her ice cream cone, paid for it, leaves, gets outside to her car, and realizes that she doesn't have her ice cream cone. And she's like, what is wrong with me? And she goes back into the ice cream parlor, and the woman behind the counter and Paul Newman are still the only other two people in there. They both have these strange grins on their faces. And she goes, I don't think I took my cone. And Paul Newman looks at her with this big smile on his face, and he goes, you put it in your purse.
Wow, that is fantastic. I totally believe that. I totally do. I had the good fortune of meeting him very briefly, and I also had the chance to meet Robert Redford. So I met the both of them. Yeah. Luckily enough, Paul Newman wins. I'm just going to say this right out front. He wins.
I was working I was working at an editor's office at the Brill Building in New York, and it was one of those old buildings that had like the sliding grate doors on the elevators and an operator.
Yeah.
And it was all it was all editing offices and production offices and everything, and I was working at an editor's office, like delivering, cuts and short ends.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, when I was like 16, 17 years old. And and one day I'm in the elevator and it stops midway on the way to the ground floor, and Paul Newman stepped on. I think he was there editing something, and it was mind-boggling. The two things that jumped out to me were, first of all, how small he was. He was
not a big guy.
Yeah, but all the cliches about his eyes,
100%.
never seen that color eyes.
Yeah.
on anybody.
It's startling.
Yeah.
Mom, in fact, has a Paul Newman story that is pretty funny, and I think let's save that for one day. She can call in the show maybe and can tell that story, because I think it would be worth it to hear it from her. But it's along those lines, and you meet the guy and it's immediately apparent, like, oh, you're just all the things that people say. You're not faking any of this. Yeah, I met him with Joanne Woodward, and they came to a show that I was in because of Kenneth Lonergan, who his show was. And they came to see him, and I happened to be like one of those actors, just like in the room, just like, oh my God, it's them. And he came. She had actually done one performance of this show at a reading with us, so I gotten to meet her. But he came with her to the evening, and it was literally just like, I'm just a suburban guy, and he was behind her, like, just like, here's my wife, and I'm just here. Nice job. Like, he completely normal, but not trying to be normal, just like great normal guy.
Yeah.
obviously he's also, done quite a bit for charity. I think has done an enormous amount, actually.
Yeah.
From what I understand. Miss him. I wish he was still around making some stuff.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Robert Redford was nice to me. I don't mean to say that he was disappointing or not nice.
He was not nice to me.
Paul Newman wins. He wasn't nice to you?
I didn't meet him, so he didn't have the chance.
Well, he won't be nice. He wouldn't be nice to you if he met you.
Well, you should write him and tell him how you feel.
I have. The letters keep getting returned. I'm partially bringing this up to see if anybody out there can help me get a letter to Robert Redford.
Matt, you should write him too, and just say like, how come
we've never met?
Bob? Why are you never nice to me?
Yeah,
you've just never been nice to me.
You've never even come over for a cup of coffee.
I've done nothing but love your movies, and this is the way you treat me.
You worked with our father, and who am I? Like nothing to you?
Yeah, I'm nothing to him.
Sad, very sad.
I had a very sad not meeting Paul Newman story, which was.
Did you have a chance to meet Paul Newman?
I had a chance to meet Paul Newman. It was during the Sunshine Boys, and my dressing room was all the way up the circular staircase. So I came down to the bottom of the staircase, and Tony Randall and Jack Klubingen were standing at the bottom of the staircase with their backs to me, so I couldn't get by them.
Okay.
And facing them are Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman, having just seen the show, and they're having a conversation. Mm-hmm. I could have said, "Excuse me," and squeezed by.
Yeah.
But I didn't, because I wanted to meet
Joanne. You're hoping that maybe by standing there like a schmuck,
so I stood there like a schmuck on the stairs, up like a step up from Tony and Jack, who just kept talking to Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman. And they kept talking to Tony and Jack, and I like it.
No.
And then finally, Joanne Woodward kind of went like this.
Yes, because
and then back to the conversation. Like, let me know. She acknowledged my presence and gave me a nod, like nice performance, and then went back to the conversation. And then I just stood there like an idiot. But that whole show was kind of like that, because I would come out of the stage door, and my son had just been born, right? So I was racing to get home. I was out of that theater so fast every night to get home. And I would come out the stage door, and because it was Tony Randall and Jack Klugman, there was a huge crowd every night. And I would come out the stage door, and I would see this. Just the whole crowd turned with expectation, and then, it's just him.
It's just like a group disappointment, just a total group sadness.
Yeah.
I feel
I had a new son at home, so I win. Actually,
you do actually, yeah. And to heck with those guys, not introducing you to Paul Newman. What's that about? Or to Joanne Woodward, who, let it be said, is also no slouch.
No,
in the amazing person department, or great actor or cool person. I actually got a chance to really work with her a little bit, because she literally did she stepped in and did a performance with us of Kenneth's play, The Waverly Gallery. Short notice. We lost our lead, couldn't do one of the shows, and she just was up at Williamstown, and she just said, "I'll do it. I'll come in and read." She just saved the show. Like, we didn't have a show that day unless she came in and did it. And she rehearsed with us for an hour, and had her book in hand, and stumbled through it, and it was completely surreal, because I didn't even know this was going to happen none of us knew this was going to happen until that day. And I'd never met her. And suddenly you're acting with her on stage in front of people. It was really something. And she was absolutely the sweetest person, just a delight. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my fancy story about my fancy ass experiences.
Very fancy.
Yeah, very fancy, huh?
Well, gentlemen, have we covered the Little Drummer Girl?
I think we've. Oh, I have one question. Music by Dave Grusin, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a theme in it that is a sort of take on some popular folk song, right? And I couldn't identify what song it was.
Oh, I'll have to go listen to it again. I don't know.
It keeps returning to some theme, and it's not When Johnny Went Off to War, but it's some song, I think, that is
The Little Drummer Boy, for Rumpa Pum Pum, maybe.
no, it's I don't think, maybe it is.
Christmas has come early. That's
Yeah.
lovely.
Huh. All right.
I didn't catch that. I knew it was Grusin. You can tell right away that it's like, hey, espionage.
And a little Burt Bacharach thrown in there for
yeah,
fun.
for good measure.
Oh, I think that was the song Hey Nani Nani, I'm a Swat for the Israelis.
For the Stasi. Great. That's a classic Shakespearean sonnet. It's not put to song indelibly.
Yes.
I didn't have I had no other things to say other than it reminded. Oh, I remember the opening is it's a really grabber opening. A beautifully done classic spy opener, which really is like it's like that's some Bresson, like late Bresson work there. That's some spare beautiful filmmaking.
Blow the shit out of that building.
They actually do it too. They blow that building up in the middle of town. I don't know what permission they got from the German government there. That was amazing. And an amazing edit that they have, because they cut inside the house. It's very shocking. They cut inside the house where the guy has the briefcase that's going to blow up, and you know what's going to happen.
There's a light effect.
There's a light effect. I think it's a practical effect and an optical effect, but they also stop the film for like 5 frames.
Yeah.
And it's this jarring, weird moment where it goes silent and white for a second, and then they cut outside and it blows up. It really, really cool.
It's a residential neighborhood with buildings all around, and they just blow the shit.
It was like a Tarkovsky movie. You're like, how did they pull this off?
Yeah.
And in case you had any question about whether it was a visual effect or something, the camera lingers there, and then half the
it collapses. Yeah.
Itself.
And it's like, no, that wasn't styrofoam. That was real. Yeah, that was pretty incredible. And honestly, Bill Nye, the man had nothing to do and makes an impression. Yeah. Like you were like, who is this guy? She should go with this guy.
He should work. Yeah.
He's a good actor. What can you say?
Yeah.
And hell of a scientist.
The best. The best. Who's better than him? So do we have a movie for next week?
We do. Harper.
Oh, speaking of Paul Newman.
Starring Mr. Paul Newman, Ms. Lauren Bacall, who your wife has worked with and who you've worked with, right, Adam?
I have, yeah.
And Amelia, I've had the pleasure to meet her. She's amazing.
I had dinner with her, with her.
When Amelia was doing the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Julie Harris.
Oh, Julie Harris. Now this is going to be a movie that Mom's going to want to see. I know Mom is, is sitting across the hall from you watching the show. She can't be on the show for some reason. You won't let her in the room. I don't know what's going on.
Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Julie Harris movie's coming up next week. You're going to love that.
Yeah. And directed by Jack Smite of Twilight Zone fame, apparently.
Yeah. That's what he's mostly known for, I guess. I can't wait.
I'll be watching some Twilight Zone this week.
Is it? Have we seen Harper? Have you both seen it?
I have not seen Harper.
I'm looking forward to it.
So there we go.
Well, there it is.
To even more
What?
is if either one of you really like Harper, telling you all the reasons that I don't like it.
Okay. There we go.
Well, let's be clear about this. You came in swinging because you picked a movie that you loved. I've not had the courage to do that yet. I've only had the courage to pick movies that I saw 20 years ago and don't really know what I think now. You have a lot of courage.
You saw it 20 years ago and don't know what you think about it. Chances are you didn't really like it all that much.
Totally wrong. That's completely wrong. That's no. I've come around on a lot of stuff, and we found some things that I think are really kind of genius.
I saw this 20 years ago. I haven't thought about it since, and it's a masterpiece.
And thank God it's a masterpiece. Well, cool. I'm looking forward to another raging argument between all of us next week.
God, we're in different locations.
It's not that I directed Harper. I hope you like it.
I don't
all right.
Your Twilight Zone.
Hey, so if you guys are out there watching and you haven't subscribed, subscribe and click the bell icon so that you get notifications of our upcoming live streams. And this coming Monday on my Conversations for Actors, Authors, and Storytellers, I'm going to be interviewing Alfredo Septien and Turi Meyer, who have been co-authors, producers, and directors for over 20 years, writing such movies as, I think, Leprechaun, I think they might have written. And they work on Vampire Diaries and a lot of television. So they're worth listening to. And join us next week for Harper and more brotherly love. We should do this show in Philadelphia.
But people can watch it in Philadelphia.
They can watch it.
They have YouTube.
Yeah,
they can do it.
All right.
Love you guys.
See you very soon.
See you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Here we go.